Hey, everybody! Welcome to Nerds with Alcohol. I'm Chris.
And I'm Ed.
As you can see, Russ is not with us tonight. We have our special guest host, Dr. Ed Rohn.
Oh yeah, there we go.
Well, welcome to the show, Ed. You've been on
Thank you.
before.
Yep.
Most recently with the Tavern Knights show when we had the Brady Bunch episode, basically, with everybody on there. Um, that was actually really cool.
Oh yeah, that's right. Forgot.
Yeah, and you were on once before as well, talking about D&D with me.
Yeah,
You filled in
I
for
think
Russ
it was one
before.
other time too.
Yeah, well, yeah, I think you came on with Russ, and then you filled in for Russ once before.
Yeah.
And to this date, actually, that's actually one of our most downloaded shows. Is the
What?
is the is the when DMs talk.
Oh great, that's cool. Oh, that's awesome. Oh, that's so fun. I don't
Yeah,
know. I'm really happy about that.
yeah, that was actually a lot of fun too because we talked D&D almost the entire show, which we're not going to do tonight. We're going to talk some D&D probably, but we got some other things we want to talk about.
That's
Um, But just like normal, how was your week? Did you have a good week this week?
it's been crazy being locked in. This whole lockdown thing. I work from home now, which is a whole new experience. Teaching remotely and
So
doing my other work.
do you teach from this same setup or like
Yeah,
okay,
actually.
do you?
So people get to see my crazy basement workspace, and a lot of people might want to divide their kind of home life and their work life, but I just like to have my own corner of the universe where it's just mine. So we have enough space in the house for everyone that lives here, and I've claimed my corner of the basement. So yeah, I don't even care. My students get to see all the weird stuff in the background, all the things and, I actually use some of my painting lights for some background lights, so I'm not really weird, but I shut off the basement overhead because of all the junk. There's this shadow back here, and somewhere back there is a whole bunch of garbage, or not garbage, but boxes and things piled up, typical basement stuff. So I've just carved off a corner. But yeah, teaching remotely is a lot of fun. They're getting ready for their midterm exam, so yay for them. Ironically, that more means it's sort of a lighter week for me.
Hmm.
Um, and mostly just kind of trying to get caught up on various nerd stuff. I finished a huge painting project.
Yeah,
Um,
which we'll talk some about painting
yeah,
later too. So, but yeah, that was amazing the way that looks.
yeah. I mean, I was really, and we'll talk about it. I won't get into that, but and then my daughter started watching. I finally convinced her to watch Avatar, the Last Airbender, the cartoon series. And all of her friends have been bugging her for a while, so she's actually right now watching it without me, which is fine. I told her, I'm like, just go ahead. And then, but the thing is, I know all of the crazy stuff that happens, so I'm waiting for stuff that goes on. But otherwise, just regular week, working. Actually, my dog just ran downstairs, so I'm probably
Oh,
gonna
yep,
come.
there.
There
I
he
see
is.
it.
Dale,
Yep.
buddy. And just
Oh,
living
wrong way.
life.
There we
How
go.
about you? How's your week been?
Pretty typical. I mean, I did some streaming over the weekend. Brought back one of the streams that I had been doing that I wasn't sure I was going to keep doing, but I'm like, screw it. I'm having fun playing the game. I might as well just put it up there, and if people watch, people watch. If not, who cares? Um, that's the Sunday morning Star Wars.
Oh, cool.
Gives me a chance to play through the storylines in the Star Wars Old Republic again, because I really love the storylines. And now the way they've got it set up is you can play the game and only play the class storylines and still
Okay.
level up at the same rate that you would to level up through there. Because it used to be you had to do all the other side missions to be able to level up enough
Mm.
to actually move on to your next like class mission. But now it's set up so that you can just do all your story missions and that's all you have to do.
Oh, cool.
But other than that, playing some Mech Warrior. I really want to get back to painting, but I haven't had a lot of time. I have been doing a lot of printing though.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I've been printing some stuff from the latest uh, set that came out from the Loot Studios guy that
Oh yeah,
I
right on.
subscribe to. Um, oh, Rich wants to know if the beard's new, Ed.
What? Wait, Rich, Rich? You just saw me last week, man. The flannel shirt is new. I get to be a lumberjack, but beyond that,
um, but
It
yes,
has grown in. It has filled in over the
hmm.
last couple of weeks, but yeah,
Yeah, I
I
was gonna say
over-trimmed it.
I don't know that I've seen you without a beard.
Yeah,
So
I've had a beard for, I don't know, 8 years, 7 years, something like that, a full beard. I look weird without facial hair. I look like a child.
Russ looks weird without facial hair. Everyone keeps saying he needs to grow his beard back.
Yeah, this is our routine. We rip on Russ when he's not around,
That's
but
right.
yeah, that beard's
Yep.
got to come back.
Well, he's already told us. So we're doing Tavern Nights this Friday.
Let's bring back the beard.
And he's already said that he's not going to be able to make it
Yep.
because he's got Halloween stuff to do, which is going to make him money. So he's choosing money over fun. Although he's going to have fun. He's body painting and he's going to play the ogre. He's playing Oliver. So he'll have a good time.
Oh,
But
cool.
I told
Oh,
him.
is it for the Halloween drive-through thing up
Yeah,
at the
he said
rent?
it's the Halloween stroll or something like that. I don't know
Okay.
what that is, but he said it's like 8 nights over the next 2 weeks, and it's making him a good chunk of change. So
Oh,
he really can't pass it up.
yeah.
But I was telling him, I'm like, yeah. So you realize that means that uh, Maricaris will be opening every door and buying every round of drinks this week.
Just milk it. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, you
Yep.
get really generous when you're not there. He's like, what? I went, that's what happens when you don't show up.
No wonder my gold was so low by the time I came back to the game.
But yeah, so he's busy. He said he should be able to do the show next week. He's hoping he can sneak out early. He said this week overtime's normally uh, optional, but he said this week he was pretty much told it's not optional. It's we really need you here because I mean we're only 5 weeks away from the parade, and they just got the artwork for one of the floats.
Oh no. Okay.
Yeah, like yesterday.
Uh,
So they're really slammed. But yeah, so otherwise though, my week was pretty much normal. A lot of work, a lot of I'm studying for a test now, so
yeah. Are you in? Well, yeah. What is going on with school for you? I didn't know you were.
I'm not actually in school. I'm studying for my CCNA again. So
Okay.
my Cisco test, the lowest level one. And I don't have to take that one anymore. And I've got enough experience where I could just go for the professional level, the NP. But I'm like, nah, I want to go back and I want to see what this new test is anyway. So, and it's one of those, it's a confidence builder too. So it's one of those, I want to go back. I'll take this test. Hopefully I'll pass it. And it'll boost my confidence to then turn around and start studying for the NP after that.
Okay. Yeah. Get back in the groove.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I can take it from home. I actually registered to do it from home.
Oh,
So
good.
the day of the test, I just have to make sure that there's no books or anything on my desk or anywhere near me. No books, no papers. Um, and it's an online proctored exam. So I have to disconnect my second monitor. I have to make sure everything's away, and then I basically have to pick up my webcam and kind of show around the room to the proctor that there's nothing around there except for one sheet of blank paper and a pen.
Interesting. I was going to ask you, how do they enforce that? So yeah, you have to
Yeah.
show them.
Yep. And then basically you have your webcam on the whole time and your mic, and you're sitting there taking your test, and there's a proctor watching you the whole time.
Oh wow.
Or at least they say they're watching you all the whole time. You know, they might go up, get a cup of coffee, go watch some TV. Who knows?
Who
But
knows?
but I'm not
Wow.
taking the chance.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's great though. I mean, and it's awesome that you're able to, this technology. I was thinking the other day about, what my career, what life, the world would be like if things weren't so interconnected, and this happened, all of the lockdown and everything and working from home, it just wouldn't have been possible. It would have been very different, very
Hmm.
strange. So, but I try to always see the upside to things. Otherwise, I think I'll lose my shit. Like I just have to try to find the benefit, kind of in the chaos and the crazy. That something is, on the upswing or on the
Hmm.
upside. I feel very fortunate in that some of what I do or what my path ended up. I'm not putting myself or my family at risk, and I really feel for the people that have to go out every day, and don't have a choice, but to earn a living.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's tough. All right,
Yeah,
I'm not going to bring us
I'm
down.
I'm lucky. I'm lucky in that I don't have to go out a lot. I did have to go into the office today because I was working in a lab, but I wore my mask the whole time. I was in the data center pretty much by myself, except for when the one guy that was helping me came in. He was wearing his mask the whole time, so we just kind of stayed together. One of the guys in my group that has been in the office actually got sent home yesterday because, or I think he voluntarily left. He found out that his wife had been exposed last week. They just found out that somebody had tested positive that she had been around in one of her
Okay.
classes, I guess. Um, and so he's like, I'm home until he goes, I'm going to go get a test to see. And he's now waiting for
Yeah.
results, I guess. So,
Wow. Huh.
but I'm not looking forward to going back into the office. They cram us in like sardines. So
Yeah, I
that's
don't
not
know.
what I'm looking forward to. And they're saying we're good till the end of the year, but I don't know that that's going to be long enough at this point. I know AT&T, where my one buddy works, they're saying end of first quarter. I think GM is saying mid next year, like May or
Yeah.
June. So it's a lot of places are finding too that people are just as productive, if not more productive, from home. I mean, I'm sure
Yep.
it's not everyone, but the majority they're actually finding actually are better getting better production when they're at home.
Yeah, well, and one of the things, a lot of my research is with people with spinal cord injury and have disabilities, and they've been for years trying to advocate for work from home. And it actually there's studies showing that people aren't getting jobs, they aren't getting the accommodations they need, and now there's a lot of leverage to show like, hey, look, we can do these jobs. So hopefully it changes things. People, again, me finding benefit, be able to think about like, hey, just because you want to work from home doesn't automatically mean we can't hire you,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And so a lot of people who would rather work from home or work remotely, I hope will be empowered, and that employment opportunities for people who might have hard time, having those accommodations might actually improve.
Mm. So now
But
you actually teach and or have your doctorate in anthropology, right? Is that what
right,
it is?
yep, medical
So
anthropology. That's
medical
right.
anthropology. Okay. So now anthropology on its own, what actually is that the study of? Because I know I took it. I took it in class, and I want to say I think I remember, but I don't want to misspeak. So what it
No,
actually?
I mean, it's in a nutshell, it's the study of culture in
That's what I
human
thought.
societies, past and present. So, and it's got a lot of parts to it, language and ancient cultures, but also modern society
So
and
there's going to be a
how,
lot of studies coming out and a lot of papers being written about these last 6 months and
yeah,
like the year 2020 coming up.
yep. And there's a lot of research dollars being allocated in that direction. Like, what is the impact? Psychology is having a lot of studies about the
Yeah.
mental health impacts, and I've been looking at things about sort of lived experience about people living with this kind of scenario while also being disabled, and talking to healthcare providers. So most of my students are all going into healthcare, and they're
Mm-hmm.
going to, they're all part of our what's called health sciences, uh, the major broadly, and they're going into becoming physical therapists, becoming doctors to go off to medical school, whatever. And so talking to a lot of them about their fears and their concerns and their sort of the ethics, because I teach an ethics course, a medical ethics course right now, and sort of how do we make sense of this whole thing is a big part of that course. So yeah, so meta-anthro is really the connection between culture and health,
Mm. Okay.
sort of
Yeah.
how we frame things culturally, like the big war over masks or this idea about vaccines and looking for save it, being saved by this, or it's all blown out of proportion, or how the messaging from our politicians shifts our view of the world and fear and all that stuff. So, it's an exciting and terrible at the same time.
Yeah, I'm kind of sad that I didn't actually follow through with what I wanted to do, and that was get into psychology. I was a psych major
Okay.
before I dropped out of college and never got my degree. But and so that was one of the things I could see all the. I'm like, this is just a rich environment for psychological papers and or psychology papers and studies. And I figured that anthropology would be another one that would be big into this time of year and seeing, or this type of thing, and seeing what happens and how people react to it.
And I think the overlap is really in the kind of the social psychology arena. So psychology in general is focuses on the individual,
mm-hmm.
and anthropology and sociology, kind of focuses on the society, the group. And
mm-hmm.
so that's, and I work with a lot of psychologists and mixed teams, and sometimes we butt heads, but other times it's a lot of fun. So
yeah, the other thing I could see is the difference between the different cultures around the world and how they deal with it too. Like the way that New Zealand was able to basically come together and eradicate it, or at least get it so that it was pretty much eliminated. It wasn't being spread anymore. No new cases. But yet the U.S. is fighting with each other over how to handle it, and so that's something that I think is kind of wild, seeing how the rest of other places, and we're so insulated, even with our news and everything like that. We don't see a lot of world news. It's all local. We have like that 1/2 hour of world news that my dad always shut off when I was a kid. It was watch the local news and then shut it off. But to me, I watch things like BBC and things from around the world, trying to get a different perspective. I like reading articles from other countries and seeing news broadcasts from other countries, because it gives me more of a world view, and I think that's good. I mean, when I visit Canada, that's what I do. I watch the news over there, or when Renee and I go to Ireland, I watch the news and see how they react to things. And
yeah, and I mean, we definitely it's a different spin on things, and I think a lot of that's an artifact of, and some of our arguing and fighting and all the politics and sort of there's part of, Anthro looks at the cultural myths, and not myths like mythology, like it's fake or made up, but stories that we tell ourselves about the way the world works. And the story that America has told itself since its inception is this kind of staunch individualism, pick yourself up by your bootstraps, any government is bad government. And I think those become part of who we are, and that we are the best and the rest of the world doesn't know what they're doing. And this, and so a language gets used, and I'm not saying it's right or it's wrong. I'm just saying I think it's what's fueling it. Some of the difference in the fighting and the, political points of view.
Mm-hmm.
How did we get down this rabbit hole?
We started talking about all sorts of stuff. So we can
show are we on?
Well, it's still nerd talk. It's just different kind of nerd talk. So I know you're drinking coffee.
Always.
Always.
My nerdness.
I am drinking. We'll get this out of the way. I am drinking another wet hopped ale, an IPA, from Shorts Brewing, called Heaven Sent. And let's see, where is it? There it is.
Very nice. I've seen that one in the store, and probably walked past it.
Yes, Renee says it's totally nerd talk.
Thanks, Renee.
But so it's 5.7% ABV. So it's got a decent aroma. I mean, it's not a super heavy aroma. At least not that I'm getting right now. As I hand it off for someone else to try.
That was awesome.
It's very hoppy. It is very hoppy. Right at the front, and so I had the Founders Harvest Ale the other last week, I think it was, and that one is another one. Same thing, wet hopped ale. It's very much hoppy up front, but where Founders had more of a smooth transition from the hop, and it wasn't overpowering. This one's a lot more bitter hop, which is another thing I like. It's just a matter of kind of a difference. I like both for different reasons. This is one that, I can drink this. It's got that really dry finish. That's where, and it gets kind of that bitter flavor. I'd say this one I don't like quite as much as the Harvest Ale, just because it's not quite as balanced, but it's still really good. And it is good for what it is, which is the Harvest Ale, wet hopped ale. I think I will give this probably 3.5 bottle caps which out of 5. So I mean, it's good if you can find it and you like these types of beers. Definitely give it a try. Shorts Brewing out of Bel Air, Michigan. That's what it looks like. So
Oh, that's great.
yeah. All
Yeah,
right.
I actually ended up running to the grocery store because I ran out of coffee, and I thought I had some. I thought I had some squirreled away that I could put off my grocery store run for a few more days, but I'm like, well, guess I'm going today. And I'm a little OCD about my coffee, so there's this Sumatran, and I like my coffee really, really dark and strong. And sometimes my wife's like, I can't even drink this; it's way too strong. But so I that the whole damn fine cup of coffee thing, which is Twin Peaks is a big part of our nerddom around here, and I've always just went for coffee over alcohol or beer. I rue the day when I pull towards the end of Star Trek Voyager, Catherine Janeway has to quit drinking coffee and starts drinking tea. I'm like, that's my nightmare. That's my nightmare scenario. So I've occasionally tried to drink some tea just to see, and I like certain teas, but they're usually dark, like Darjeelings or Earl Grey or English breakfast. So I like to guess the caffeine is, and I can go to sleep. I mean, as soon as I'm done, I could drink a pot of coffee and go to bed in about 10 minutes.
Yeah,
So
that's kind of the way I am. Caffeine really doesn't affect me like it does most people. It doesn't get me all super wired. A lot of times, if I sit at my desk in the morning, I'm sipping coffee and I'm ready to fall asleep because the warmth and everything. It's just I'm just like I'm relaxed. I'm just ready for a nap now.
Yep. I'm the opposite. If I don't have the coffee, that's when I have the problems because I get headaches. Totally
Yeah.
addicted.
Yes, I am addicted to caffeine. I actually got off caffeine for about 3 years, and
Okay.
then got myself back on the caffeine.
Fell off the wagon.
I fell off the wagon and wanted back on the caffeine, and I'm still on it. But the only caffeine I have now is coffee and occasionally tea. I like a good Irish breakfast tea. That's
Cool.
one of my favorites. So I discovered that over in Ireland and just love it. But excuse me. Forgot where I was going with that now. But anyway, yeah. So coffee. Um,
Coffee.
yeah, coffee. Oh, I was saying we need to get you a good coffee stout or something.
Yeah, I've tried coffee beer. Some of them are pretty good. I've had some ones that I haven't minded too much. It just depends. Yeah. Well, I mean, but whenever I think of stouts, I think it was a stout. It was a Scotch ale. I used to drink McEwen's in college, and that stuff I had to quit. It made me so sick. Not sick in like a drunk sick, but sick in like a bad on my digestion. Like I ate too much Taco Bell kind of sick, not to get too personal, but I was like, what
Oh.
is going on with this beer? I'm done with this stuff. But it was so good. I just couldn't stop myself. But yeah, I really like McEwen's. So not a dig on McEwen's by any stretch, but and my good friend of mine, he's really into various beers and we usually kind of knows my beer tastes. And if we hang out on the rare occasion, especially nowadays, he'll usually have something up his sleeve for me to have one or two. But yeah, those stout, rich beers are a little rough on the system sometimes.
Yeah, Renee says she has a coffee mead you can try.
Oh, okay. Coffee mead.
Yes, that's what she
Wow, I'm
said.
a mead. I love mead. My addiction that I've been as I get older, I've been moving away from is sort of the sugary sweet stuff, but I can't give up the honey. So mead is right up my alley. I love it.
Yeah, that's the
So
one I don't know. I haven't had that one. I've had the Kunin's has a coffee beer that it to me it's just wrong because I'm used to like coffee stouts and stuff like that, and coffee is a dark thing. This is
yeah,
in a pale like colored beer. It's like yellow, and you take a sip, and it tastes like coffee.
wow.
And it throws my brain out of whack, and I'm like I can't do it. It's like Dragon's Milk came out with their Dragon's Milk White, which is basically it looks like kind of like a Bud Light. It's a yellowish colored beer,
Okay.
and you taste it, and it tastes like a stout. And
Wow.
I'm like, no, no, my brain cannot. No.
We were at the party store somewhat recently, and I saw finally Chimay, because when we buy beer, I usually like to spend a few bucks because I don't
Hmm.
drink it very much. But Chimay has finally gotten small bottles. You can buy like a 4-pack of Chimay instead of the giant bottles. You know, it's like the
Hmm.
Belgian, whatever, the old monks
Uh-huh.
recipe from like 600 years ago or
Yeah,
whatever
like
it is.
the Trappist stuff.
Yeah, I think so. It's like Chimay, like Chimay. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right.
Yeah, I know which
Uh,
one you're talking about.
and for the longest, the problem is like we would buy a bottle, my wife and I would split it, and that would be fine. But if she wasn't interested or I wasn't interested, it would go to waste because you just can't drink. It's the size of a champagne bottle. And then they came out with 4-packs, but they're still like $20 for a 4-pack or something like that. It's nothing to sneeze at. It's a lot of money
Yeah, let's see.
for
I was
what it
just
is.
yeah, there it is. Chimay. Yeah, I know I've seen it. Let's see. Yeah, they're a Trappist brewery. So yeah,
Okay.
they're Trappist monks.
Yeah, and that's out of my knowledge base, so I didn't recognize the term, but
Yeah, it's basically the anything that's a Trappist beer can only be made at a Trappist monastery.
okay.
And there's most of them are in Belgium. There's actually one in New York that's actually an official Trappist monastery, and they can
Wow.
actually make Trappist beers, and some of them are actually pretty good. I've had a couple of them, but nothing beats what comes out of Belgium and the monks.
Yeah, I had heard that during World War II, the German tanks would avoid the monasteries because the rumbling of the tank tread would knock dust off the rafters and it would go into the open vats and it would ruin
Mm.
the so in the
Yeah,
middle of war they're avoiding ruining the beer. So
yes, yeah. The way
I
that
don't know
they
if that's
would.
apocryphal or if that's true,
Hmm.
but it's an interesting story.
Well, the thing is that like in Belgium, the way that there's me and a bunch of my friends, because Belgian beers taste a certain way, and a lot of the Belgian beers have flavors that most brewers try and keep out of their beers,
Mm.
like the cotton candy flavor or a green apple flavor, things like that. It's things that they actually bring into their beers, and it's partially from their yeast, the yeast that they use, and all this. But the way that they actually make like a lambic, which a lot of times are their fruit beers, like their Crikes and their framboise and things like that they add a lot of fruit to. Basically, they brew the beer, they then pump it up into the rafters, into these big open vats, and they're not deep, they're just flat. And basically the beer lays in this thin layer, and then they open up the shutters that they have in there and just let whatever is out there come in.
Oh wow, okay. So
And
yeah,
that's and they
tank dust might not be a good addition.
yeah, so they just let all the wild yeast come in and ferment it, and then they pump it back down, and then that's what they use.
Wow,
I'm like, that's
fascinating.
crazy. But birds would get in there too, and I'm like, oh, that's just nasty.
Well, it's alcoholic. It's
It'll kill it.
you kill it. That's a riot. Oh,
Oh, but so we were talking earlier, and I don't know if you mentioned it before, but you had just watched Terminator Dark Fate.
oh yeah, yep. Yeah, it
And
came out on Hulu. It wasn't
yes,
one I was going to go to the theater for after getting burned a number of times.
yes. And I actually kind of gave up on the Terminator series a while back. And but you're talking about it. I actually started watching it today. I got to watch all but like the last half hour. Um they had made it to the dam at this where
Okay.
I was. So but I see what you mean, because what we were talking about, and what I was going to talk about here was going to bring up was the idea of movies that basically write out movies that came before them, sequels that
Yep.
write out the movies that came before them. And this one definitely does that. I mean, it pretty much gets rid of at least three and on.
Yep. Yep. 3, 4, and all of yeah, they're all just wiped out.
Yeah,
Yep. Only 1 and 2 seem to matter.
yeah, because right at the beginning. There's a scene from two,
Yep.
because it's her in the psych ward.
And then they do some creative, and I don't want to get spoilers, but they do some creative like deep fake or whatever it is they're using where they de-age
Yeah,
Sarah Connor and do some flashback stuff, and
and
it gets kind of,
Schwarzenegger too,
and
actually.
Schwarzenegger, yep. And and that's what sucked me in for Genesis. I was willing to give Terminator Genesis a try because of they were kind of overlapping the story from the original Terminator and changing it. And then so I enjoy that movie kind of for what it is, but
So Genesis was the one in the future, right? That was the one with John growing up and fighting the.
no,
No.
Genesis was the
Oh,
one
that
with
was Salvation. Was the one I was. That was the last one I saw was Salvation. That was the
okay,
one where
so Genesis was the one
Bale played John.
So Genesis was the one where they had Amelia Clark playing Sarah Connor
Oh,
from
okay,
Game of
yeah,
Thrones.
yeah.
So
I
that one
didn't know
totally
that.
missed your
Yeah,
radar.
yeah. I didn't know that. That's yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
And she wasn't bad. I didn't particularly mind her. I didn't like who they had playing Kyle Reese, and I really thought, well, he had passed away. But one of my favorite roles for oh gosh, I can't remember the actor's name, but he played Chekhov in the new Star Trek continuity.
Oh yeah. Um, I know who you're talking about. Yeah.
But
Oh,
he played a young Kyle Reese in Salvation, and I think he really studied. And now we're bringing up people's names that I should know.
Anton Yelchin.
Anton Yelchin, but and then the original Kyle Reese was played by
Bean, wasn't it? Um,
yeah,
Michael Bean.
Michael Biehn, who I love everything he's done, but you could tell that Anton Yelchin really studied Michael Biehn or Bihn's mannerisms and had really kind of captured his cadence, his vocal
Mm-hmm.
cadence. And I think, had things gone differently, he probably would have been old enough. Because when he was in Salvation, he looked like he was 15 or 16, maybe
Mm-hmm.
17. He looked really young. He looked too young to play Reese. But then when they did Terminator Genesis a few years later, I don't know the timeline of how the filming versus when Anton Yelchin passed away tragically. I don't know how that all connects together, but that would have been awesome. But as it is, the new one, the Dark Fate, I think what sold me on it too was how much they just connected it all together, even down to the musical score. It was the only one of the sequels after two that I know of. I could be wrong. It was the only one that used the music, the sort of the dun 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 dun,
Oh,
that sort of cadency, and that was just, to me, that just speaks Terminator so much. And then the actual music and all of the kind of the swell, so it really connected it to me. I will say, like, the action for Dark Fate sort of falls into that same trope that we're dealing with now of just everything having to be a bit over the top. Some of the action scenes were just a little too much. But other than that, like, it was better than all the other garbage that's come since
yeah.
T2.
Yeah. CD, one of our regular watchers here, said that after two, they all kind of mixed together into a pile of mediocrity.
Yes. Yep. They have their moments. There's little cool bits. Like I said, like, Yelchin playing Kyle Reese was pretty cool. I didn't love what, they tried to do with Skynet and, the John Connor role and different people playing him, and
Mm-hmm.
just all a mess and a blur. But yeah, I mean, they effectively kind of reboot it, and sort of say this is different now. I think they left it, and not to any spoilers, I'm trying to avoid them. I think they left it in a place where they could sort of say, like, okay, this is the cycle that's going to continue to repeat indefinitely, and we don't
Mm-hmm.
need to make more movies. Or they are saying, we can make another movie.
Yeah.
Knowing Hollywood, they'll make another movie, but
My
and they did a lot with what the Terminator's programming is capable of, and some of the other things, and how it grows and evolves, and it's interesting. So I
well,
guess the whole
and that's the thing. One of the things in this one, that I'm like, I don't mind the way that they kind of rewrote things, in that they kind of just threw out those middle movies in that, but they still link it to 1 and 2. So it's still in that timeline. But they tell you how, because the first ones, everything was supposed to start in 1997. But we're a long ways past that now. Yep. And so I like that they said, well, we stopped it. But there's something else that comes later. So that still winds up with this same idea, the same thing where the robots rise up. It's the same type of Terminators.
Yeah, and it's a fascinating kind of morality play, if you want to get sort of philosophical about it, about how much control do we really have to change the future, or is it predetermined and it's just it's a variation on a theme? The same crap's going to happen
no matter what you do.
No matter what you do. It might look different, it might have a different veneer, but there's not the whole metaphorical butterfly that you kill and go back in time and step on a dinosaur or baby dinosaur and like your grandparents are never born. Kind of thing. It's not quite that. Like there's like a plot. It's almost like, is there a universal plot to reality that's going to happen whether you like it or not, versus actually having control, which in some ways is kind of relaxing in a way of sort of like, I think it's sort of sense making of how we kind of control our reality, that even if it's a bad outcome, at least it's all set in stone and we don't have to worry about it. The real scary thing is when we think there is nobody at the controls and we're just making it up as we go along. The same thing with conspiracy theories. I think conspiracy theories are comforting for people because at least you have a boogeyman, a bad guy you can kind of put a finger on. But, to think that we could get all screwed up without being any sort of conscious, mustache twirling bad guy in the background kind of plotting our demise, is almost scarier. Like that all it takes, for example, is greed to get to where we are, or lack of caring about your fellow human being to get where we are, or whatever. This computer program is going to go crazy no matter what we do. But then it reminds me about other movies, and so some of the other things and series that I was thinking about, like the opposite end is the Evil Dead series, which just unapologetically doesn't care that it completely contradicts itself.
Well, the first two movies are pretty much the same movie, just with the second one with a bigger budget because it wasn't a student film.
Right.
And then you got Army of Darkness, which just plays on everything that came from the other ones and just makes it takes it so far over the top.
Right. But then they get the series. And the series, like, it was like almost they couldn't decide. Like season 1 of the series seemed to ignore Armies of Darkness entirely. And then season 2 started referencing it. And so I'm like, did it happen? Did it not happen? Like, it doesn't matter. Like the whole first season, I figured they just went with Evil Dead 2 and then went into the series. And those were the only things that were quote unquote canon.
You're talking about Ash versus Evil Dead?
And then they went into Ash versus Evil Dead, which is a highly rewatch. I watched it once and then I rewatched it straight through because I kind of watched it piecemeal, and then I wanted to get kind of the whole plot arc eventually. And it's just good, stupid fun.
and there are some moments in that though that were cringeworthy that I was like, no.
Like in the series or
in the series.
Okay.
In the Ash versus Evil Dead series, there were a couple of scenes that I was just like,
Like cringe because they were gross, or cringe because they were bad for the plot?
No, cringe because they were not even gross, just they were that cringe where, like, when he's wearing that guy in the one.
Yeah. All right, yeah, no, I get it. Yeah, there was some pretty intense gross out factors, but that's Sam Raimi and his crew, and I love seeing his brother pop back up again, and Ted Raimi being in there, and I think he even reprised his role as the old lady in the fruit cellar.
Yeah,
he was back in that suit from what I read. And
he was shemping it as they call it.
Yep. Shemping it. That's awesome. I hadn't heard that one before.
Yeah, that's what they call it because he would play so many different parts. Somebody that played a bunch of different parts in those movies, they called him the Shemp.
Okay.
and Ted, that was his thing, because he is the one that was always having to get put in the makeup and doing all that. Like at the end of Evil Dead, the woman that's flying across the
Yeah,
S
the
Mart,
woman
that's
from the
him.
basement.
Yeah,
Yeah, I know. That's what I'm saying. He reprised that role. He gets to do it again in Ash versus Evil Dead.
yeah,
And they go back in time, and
yeah.
there's time loops and all this crap. And, and then you have other series like the Halloween series, which I've recently found out has like 4 different continuities. So
See,
all the
that's one that I
Halloween.
haven't actually really followed. Is that one?
So the Halloween, there's Halloween 1, I guess,
Hmm.
the original from '78, and then Halloween 2 is when they introduced the concept of Jamie Lee Curtis's character being Michael Myers' sister.
Hmm.
And John Carpenter hated that. He never wanted her to be the sister. And then they do 3, which is the Season of the Witch, which is an amazing movie if it didn't have the Halloween tag on it, because they were trying to turn it into an anthology. And then they did like 4, 5, and 6, and that follows what's his name, Dr. Loomis, his psychologist, and Jamie Lee Curtis is gone. And then they started doing like the H2O and Resurrection, I think, and Jamie Lee Curtis is back. And then now they've got this new ones that are with, that just came out, the Halloween, and then Halloween's End is coming out next year, and that ignores all of them except for Halloween 1.
Well, and then there's the Rob Zombie Halloween that was the reboot, which
Which is
honestly
just like
though
an
was
homage.
just, yeah, which it's an homage, but that one was actually pretty good from everything I've heard. I've
Yeah.
only seen part of it, but I've heard it's actually really good. And one of the things, Rob Zombie's a huge horror fan, so
Oh,
he's gonna do it justice if it's a movie that he actually liked. So, and he's a huge Halloween fan and John Carpenter fan.
yeah. No, it's fantastic. So yeah, that was just my little like sitting around philosophizing when I was watching Dark Fate, going like, how so funny how they like, you know, and I mean, I guess it kind of speaks to some of the other fandom, like being involved in different media and ideas and movies and books. And Hollywood just keeps going back to the same wells over and over and over again because they know they're kind of proven. But there's so many cool things out there. Like, where's our Dragonlance movie series?
Mm-hmm.
Where's the Dresden Files, as you were talking about earlier? And
Yeah,
and
well,
and
Jim Butcher just got the rights back to that because Fox had it, and Fox totally fucked up that show
yeah, I never
when they
watched
did
the
it.
show, but
It's not worth watching, really.
okay.
I like Paul Blackthorne, who they got to play Harry, but I don't think he was the right person to play. So in the books, Murphy is this petite blonde cop. Um, and in the show she's this um dark-haired, dark-eyed woman, and his girlfriend Susan is this Latina beautiful woman, dark hair, dark eyes, and I believe in the show she was either a blonde or something. They changed her up too, and I'm like, what? And in the comic, one of the big things is Harry drives this thing called the Blue Beetle. It's this Volkswagen that's been put back together with all these different pieces, and it was originally blue, but now it's blue, green, red, white, as each of the panels gets changed. And the in the show he drove a Jeep,
Okay.
and a lot of people didn't like that he used a hockey stick as his staff and a drumstick as his wand. Those were I don't the staff thing in the books. The staff actually has a lot of importance on how he made it and where he made it. So having it become a hockey stick, I could see being a problem. Using modern implements, though, okay, they were trying to really pull that whole Wizard of the Modern World type of thing together.
Sure. Okay.
But overall, I just thought the whole series was just really poorly done.
Hmm.
And there's a lot of people that want to see it much more done more like the books. And honestly, I think if somebody like Amazon or Netflix or even HBO Max would do a show like that, I think they could have a show for 7, 8 years easy. if they do one book a season, or even the early books are kind of small, so if they could do even like 2 books in the first season and 2 books in the second season maybe, and then start going like 1 book at a time from there, I think you would have a fantastic series.
Nice, yeah. Well, yeah, it's funny you brought that up. I was thinking about, I've been hearing a lot of buzz about HBO Max, and the last thing I need is another streaming service. But I think they're picking up a lot of the DC Universe stuff, and I guess they're getting a Green Lantern series. They've greenlit a 10-episode Green Lantern.
Oh yeah, I hadn't heard that yet. That'll be cool.
Kind of exciting to me. And they said it's going to be set in the same basic CW DC universe.
Okay.
But it's going to be its own thing, and it's going to have a different vibe. Well, I think they're maybe trying to tap into the kind of the Netflix Marvel. I think it sounds like it's going to be a little bit more Guardians of the Galaxy, epic space-faring than it would be a city level.
So it's going to be more like the Green Lantern Corps than just Green Lantern itself. Yeah, I have heard something about that. But yeah, the HBO Max, HBO is owned by Time Warner now. So that's why everything from DC Universe, because they're killing DC Universe, it's going to become a subscription online comic thing called DC Universe Infinite, I think it is. And that starts January 21st. That's when all of the stuff that's on DC Universe right now, all the animated movies, all the movies, everything that's still on there is going to transition over to HBO Max. So HBO Max is going to have all upcoming seasons of Titans and Harley Quinn, and Swamp Thing they've moved to CW. Doom Patrol's already on there. The CW shows are still going to stay on CW, so like the Arrowverse stuff is still staying on there. But I actually could see some of that stuff even moving over eventually to HBO.
Yeah, I got to say I'm getting fatigue over keeping up with all of those. I sort of trailed off on a lot of the number of shows, the number of things that interconnect. And it reminds me a lot of like back as a kid in the 90s trying to collect comic book crossovers.
Yes.
It's like, okay, great. I got to buy 20 issues of this comic this month to follow this story. And, it's just at my age in my life, back then it was great. It was awesome. Like I ran out and I got them all, and I had them waiting in my pull box when I went.
Oh.
It's my comic. I can't do it. I can't bring myself to do it.
You locked up for a second.
Okay. Yeah, sorry about that. I was just saying, like, back in the day, I could really keep up with it all. And now it's just, I can't. In fact, I went to a comic book store. I went to my old comic book store, A to Z, which is where Russ, he painted the mural on the outside. And he goes there. And I thought about picking up some comics, and I just couldn't. I couldn't figure out where to get my teeth in. And it's really hard if you go out for a while. Like I was looking about getting graphic novels for like Conan. I thought maybe I'll get some new because Marvel picked Conan back up again. I thought about Transformers and G.I. Joe. I'm like, let me go back to the stuff I liked when I was a kid. And I walked out without anything. It's really hard to get in there.
Yeah, and that's the thing for me. It's hard for me to get back into it. I've wanted to at times. I actually live like a mile away from the comic book store I went to as a kid, as a high schooler. My buddy and I found this place over here in Fraser where I live, and they were actually it looked like a house that was turned into like a business, and they were in the upper floor, and you actually like walked up, like it was like going up a flat. Ooh, I just hit the mic. You go up like you're going up to somebody's flat and go in, and it was just a comic book store. And I was, I think, member number 25. And so they would pull my comics and I'd go in and get them. Well, they moved to another spot, and they've been there for like 20 years, actually 25 years now probably. And it's in this little strip mall that I pass all the time. And I've been in there once since I've been living in this house for 6 years now, and or 5 years. And I've been in the store once. And it's one of those, it's kind of I don't go in there because I would spend money, but it's also a lot of times when I go there, or I go to Gilded Blades or someplace else with comics, I start looking at like the bound editions. So like the big graphic novels, I'm like, I don't know where to start, and it becomes overwhelming, and I wind up walking out with nothing
Yeah,
because
and that
I
was my
don't
experience with
I
the
don't know where to go. I don't know where to start.
Yeah, it's really hard. And sometimes too, like I'll look into things like the New Mutants was a big, we've talked about this before. And I thought about, I'll search for, continuities online, like, okay, where could I get my teeth in? Or I'll sometimes see an ad that says like, this is a good point to jump in, or they're rebooting something or, whatever. But it's just, I don't know how they're going to kind of keep this. I know DC has been on the ropes in the past, and they had a big, was it DC that they had a big firing and a bunch of people
Yeah.
were let go,
Yep.
and they're restructuring. And it's like, it's very strange. And it's the source, it's the wellspring of a lot of Hollywood material, but nobody's reading it. And
Mm-hmm.
so, not nobody, but not a lot of people, as in the past, are reading it. So it's interesting. I saw this, I can't remember who wrote it, but he had it was kind of a veteran of the field. And I'm mad that I didn't save the article, but he was saying how to save comic books. And he was basically saying we need to quit putting out monthly comics for adults. Like, we'll put out monthly comics for kids that are episodic, that don't do anything, that don't have a plot, that you can just buy, a kid can buy. So we're still addressing kids. And then we will put out graphic novels for the adults that are no collected, that just every 6 months you'll get the next, sort of more like serial books as
Mm-hmm.
opposed to monthly issues. And I was like, maybe that would work. I don't know. But he seemed convinced. He's like, this company, like things are gonna go bad, and they already are, but who knows?
Well,
So
one of the comics I want to get, and they're probably on at least the second issue right now, is the new one. Russ talked about it a few weeks ago, probably like a month ago now. But it's the Three Jokers.
okay.
I've always been a big fan of Joker. I've got a plaque of Joker up here. I've got Batman down in the basement. I've got Joker sitting here on my desk. But for me, he's that while he's psychotic, and that's the one reason that Batman can beat him. He's a smart villain. Otherwise, he's that intelligent villain. There's one in the Dresden series that we talked about earlier, Nicodemus, who's also he's that smart villain, and those are the villains that I like. Those are the villains that I've always liked in stories, because it's the how is he going to beat him?
Yeah.
Moriarty in the Sherlock Holmes books
Yeah.
is a
Or
smart
like the
villain.
Master in Doctor Who.
Yes, the Master. The Master is one of the ones that was one of my first introductions to that truly smart villain type. And whenever he showed up, it was like, oh shit! It really is. It's an oh shit moment when you see that villain show up, because you never know what they're going to do, and they've got a plan. They're
Right.
not just the cackling villain. They're the ones that have thought something out, and have probably thought 3 steps ahead, at least.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm waiting for, in terms of good treatments and media, like Joker's had a lot of good FaceTime and uh various media outlets. I mean, my Mark Hamill being my favorite one.
Yes.
But I wanted to see the Riddler finally done right. I think his level of intelligence could really,
And
really make for a great story.
I think that's what they're trying to do with the Batman, because it's supposed to be Riddler is the main villain in that.
Okay.
And so I'm curious. I'd like to see how they do that too. If you've seen any of the year one stuff,
Yeah.
like Batman Year One, Riddler's the main protagonist in that too, or
I
antagonist
read
in that.
like a lot of I think they're in the similar continuity, but like the Long Halloween and what was the other one that was in the same genre that led into the Hush series? Um, anyway, then all of them were in that, but it was like the Calendar King or whatever it was. It's sort of the Long Halloween thing, but those were pretty good. Um, but yeah, it's just, it is what it is, man. I don't know what's going to happen with comics, especially with so much media to absorb, on TV. Like I'm watching The Boys, I've still got a couple more
Yep.
episodes of season 2 of that.
I just finished that. That was the end of season 2 is wow.
Yeah,
I
I
was actually
bet.
surprised. I didn't realize it was only 8 episodes. I was kind of bummed. I thought it was more. I didn't realize season 1 was only 9. I thought it was 10, and I figured this one was 10. And so my buddy who watched it before me, he's like, I didn't know this was the season finale. I'm like, it is? There's
Nope.
only 8 episodes?
Yeah, I think I'm on episode 6, so I
Hmm.
still got a couple more to
That's
go. I tend to savor these things a little bit.
Well, and The Boys is one of those shows though that at least in the first season, it was so much when I first watched it that I could only watch one episode. I got behind, but I could only watch one episode. It's not something I could sit down and binge.
Yeah,
It was so intense, and some of the scenes were so intense that I just could not get. I couldn't sit and binge it. Hey, Taco Maniac.
Taco Maniac.
Yeah, somebody just came on. They said they have a question for you. What's your question for Ed? We'll get to it as soon as it comes up.
Question for me?
Yeah, that's what it says. That's what
Oh,
they're saying.
gosh.
So, but we'll get to it as soon as they type it in here.
Okay.
But yeah, so the Boys is just it's one of those shows that it's a heavy show.
Yeah.
Watching it's a very heavy show. So it's for me it's one of those I watching it this season I kept up on it and I watched every episode once a week once I caught up. They released the first 3 in 1 week. So
Right.
I actually watched one and then I waited a couple days and I watched another one and I waited a couple days and I watched another one and I waited a couple of days and I watched the fourth one. So it was one of those where I was able to put it to kind of spread it out a little bit. But
Catch
I
back up.
yeah, I need a minute after I watch one of those usually because
When I
it's
think I mean, I guess I won't say he's underrated, but one of my favorite actors has really become Carl Urban,
mm,
and he really absorbs like his take on Judge Dredd and his take on Bones McCoy. Even though whatever problems the Star Trek reboots have, he was amazing. He was my favorite part about that. And then playing in Lord of the Rings, I actually based Bennick's original look from the D&D campaign on him, on Carl Urban's character. So yeah. Did this person come up with a question? Yeah.
yeah, they want to know if you can unbutton your shirt some more. You're kind of cute.
I have a T-shirt on.
Yeah, I know. There's a T-shirt on. So what difference does it make, really?
And probably 15 Shades of Red. I hope.
Oh, and CD just came back with, "Wow, Russ never got that question."
Burn.
Oh, even the fans beat on Russ.
Oh gosh. Okay. So yeah.
That was awesome.
That's awesome. I wanted to bring up before I forgot. There was one show that I'm really excited about because I'm a big Simon Pegg and Nick Frost fan. Is that they're doing the Truth? Have you seen the Truth Seekers? That's coming out at the end of the month on Amazon Prime. They're doing their own spoof on it's a series, but it's very much like Shaun of the Dead. But Nick Frost plays a like a paranormal investigator who goes out and they're recording a TV show. And so it just looks hilarious. So I'm excited to watch it. Plus, The Mandalorian comes out the same day. So the end of this month is going to be pretty exciting.
What was that show?
It's called Truth Seekers.
Truth Seekers, and what's it on?
It's going to be on Amazon.
Amazon. Okay,
Yep,
I will definitely be looking for that because I'm a huge Simon Pegg fan, and Nick Frost
has got this giant beard and he looks hilarious, and I guess Simon Pegg is they're reversing a little bit of their roles somewhat, and yeah, the trailer's a riot.
Them and Shaun of the Dead. I mean, Shaun of the Dead is one of my absolute favorpoint movies. I just love. I want to actually. I've thought about it for several years for Halloween. I want to actually do Shaun at some time. At some point, I want to get a cricket bat and spray fake blood on it. And get the just the white button down shirt with the little spot of red You got some red on
Got
you.
red on you. Yeah, my buddy, good friend of mine, Matt, like the characters in that movie are like him and I in a lot of ways. Our dynamic was the same for a long time. Uh, I'd keep him out in the shed playing video. That's a riot.
uh,
Ugh,
so
so what
all
do you
right.
want to talk about? What else are we talking about?
Well, you also brought up, you brought it up earlier that you've gotten your daughter to start watching Avatar, The
Yeah.
Last Airbender. What's her reaction to it? Is she
Oh,
liking
she's
it?
hooked on it.
Oh, is she?
So Appa in particular, the big flying bison, looks a lot like one of our dogs who was down here.
Oh, yeah, I can see that.
So yeah, so there's that vibe going on. And she's definitely, she absorbs a lot of media, a lot of nerd media too, and is really interested. Like she read Fellowship of the Ring finally, and then we watched the movie version. Then she started reading the Two Towers, but puttered out because school started back up again, and her course load is kind of up there. Um, so she'll get back to it, but she's trying to read the book first and then watch the movie. So we had a big discussion about Tom Bombadil, about why he wasn't in the movies, and about how that is true. But for Avatar, yeah, she's very much. I actually have to ask her. Literally, we started it last night, and I think she's like almost done with season 1 already. So
wow.
She was laying in bed last night. She said watching it, and then she said she had to turn it off because she didn't want to miss anything by accidentally falling asleep. So
yeah, I actually never watched that when it was on.
Neither did I.
And so seeing that it's on now, I'm like, oh, with the episodes I caught, because my daughter watched it actually when it was on, and so when I would have her, she would watch it, and I would catch some of the episodes here and there. And it was one of those things where I always enjoyed them when I watched them. And it was one that I never went out of my way to watch. And I never made the plan to sit down and start watching it. So now that it's all together in one spot, I'm like, oh, I'll start watching it again. And I actually had it on while I was working one day. And I'm working away and I just have it on. And I'm like, okay, this is kind of cool. And then I realized that I'm not able to pay attention to it. And I kind of want to. So I'm like, I can't work and watch this at the same time because I'm either going to miss a whole lot of that or I'm not going to get my work done. So
that's what I thought you were going to say.
Yeah,
I thought you were going to say that you realized you had for half an hour gone by and you hadn't gotten your work done.
No. Plus, I'm also trying to get through Clone Wars because I've never gotten through that. So I had gotten through like a season and a half or 2 seasons of that, and I left it for a long time, and so I went back and I actually watched season 1 again, and now I'm into season 2 on that. So I'm trying to get through that so I can watch Rebels and what's the other one? There's Rebels and there's another one. But I also just started playing Star Wars Squadrons. Okay. Which I guess has tie-ins to like Rebels and things like that too. So,
great. Yeah, I've gone through Rebels a couple times. Actually, my daughter wanted to watch those. Actually, she came last year. It was said everyone's been talking so much about Star Wars, and I realized that I haven't actually seen them in the right order. I've seen them, but not in the right order. And so we started from the beginning. And
I was gonna say, what do you consider the right order?
The right order, right? So we decided to do them in time order.
So chronologically.
Yes. So, and we did stop between 2 and 3 and watched the Clone Wars. And then got back into it and watched 3. And then watched, Rogue One. And we inserted everything.
Rogue One is a great one to insert in there.
Yeah.
And then you had
Rebels was great. We put Rebels in. That was a lot of fun.
Did you put Solo in there too?
She watched Solo after it was all done.
Okay.
She went back later and watched Solo.
I actually didn't hate Solo.
I didn't either.
A lot of people I know hated Solo. I didn't think it was that bad. Well, I think it wasn't a great movie overall, and it wasn't. I don't think they did justice to the Han Solo legacy as a heist movie. If you just look at it as a sci-fi heist movie, it was actually a pretty good movie.
Yeah. Well, yeah. It was enjoyable. I liked it. So total non sequitur, but I was going to ask you if you have heard of or had any experience with a Cameo. Do you know this?
I have heard of it. Yes.
Okay. So I'm a big Joe Bob Briggs fan who hosts The Last Drive-In on Shudder,
Yeah.
and it's all like so it's
I
hilarious.
remember him from back in like the 80s, early 90s.
Yeah, Monster Vision.
Yeah,
And all
Monster
that
Vision. Yeah,
stuff. He's getting
USA.
ready.
USA. He was a USA movie host or
Yep.
something like
And
that.
then he was
yeah.
on Showtime for a number of
Yeah.
years.
Yeah, Showtime's
And,
one of those. Yeah.
They're doing a special next I think on the 23rd. They're doing a special from some weird remote locale. They got some cabin out in the middle of nowhere, and they're doing like a Halloween special. And then they just got signed for season 3 for The Last Drive-In on Shudder. But anyway, he's on that, and I keep seeing videos of people. He'll for $100 he'll wish your loved one a happy anniversary and do like a 2-minute.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went on their website just to see like who was there. I thought about who would I want to hear from, and unfortunately there's not that many people on there that I
Yeah.
from. Robert Picardo is on there, which I thought was kind of cool. So he's great. But
the curling club actually, somebody actually had somebody make a video or got the Cameo for a message to the curling club because of the whole COVID thing going on, and we didn't know if we were gonna have a season. And it was the guy that plays Riley from Letterkenny.
Okay.
And it was hilarious because he's just walking around his house holding up his phone, basically taking this video. And
oh, that's great. Yeah, I was looking for Twin Peaks people, so I thought, I could like surprise my wife with something. And the only person that's on there is Sherilyn Fenn, who plays Audrey Horne, which is awesome, but it's not one of my favorite or her favorite characters. So I was like, kind of bummed, looking for somebody else or something else. But there's not too many people on there. I kept searching for names, any name I could come up. Kevin Conroy's on there though.
Oh, is he?
That would be awesome. Get a personalized Batman message, but that's all I saw that got me super excited.
Yeah, just do that and have that as like the intro for the show.
I wonder if Peter Cullen is on there. For those that don't know, Optimus Prime.
Yeah.
Is my the voice of many people's. Nope, he's not.
No, he's actually making money right now, so
Yeah, probably. Yep, it's a lot of people that aren't making a ton of cash. So, oh well.
Yeah, it's Gilbert Gottfried and a lot of voiceover people.
Yeah, that's still awesome.
Yeah, it is.
A whole lot of really cool people.
There were a few people that
spot, I think between level of fame and whether or not you would be on this service.
Well,
somebody got John Cleese, one of the podcasts the Live Play Pathfinder podcast I listened to. One of the guys on there got John Cleese to do a happy birthday message for his dad, who is a big Monty Python fan. $750 for Snoop Dogg, man. Let's do
it. Wow. There was a show that Russ and I were on, the Better on Draft podcast.
Oh yeah.
About a year ago or so. And that was one of the first places I had heard of Cameo. I had kind of heard about it. That was kind of when it blew up, was when we were doing that. When we did that show. Yeah, and they actually did a thing on the show where they wanted us to guess. We played a game where they would give you 2 celebrities, and you had to guess which one was more expensive on Cameo.
Oh, funny. Okay.
So it was funny, and they'd go through and like, who do you think? Which one do you think? Which one do you think? Which one do you think? And then they would tell you which one it was. So it was actually a lot of fun. It was funny.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I just got aware of it. I mean, I sort of knew it peripherally, but yeah, I thought I'd start digging around to see what was on there. But so far, I haven't found too much. Ooh, I could think of another person. So one of my big kind of like, I have a handful of actors that are sort of, I wouldn't say B actors, but they're definitely not like, Hollywood leading.
Yeah, not the A-list folks.
And one of them is Jeffrey Combs, who is Herbert West and he played a number of characters in Star Trek, including Commander Shran in Enterprise, and he played Wayun in Deep Space Nine, as well as the pretender to the Ferengi. What's the head of the Ferengi? The Grand Nagus, acting Grand Nagus. Anyway, and he played the voice of the Question in the Justice League Unlimited. He played the voice of Ratchet in Transformers Prime. And I didn't realize it was the same person. And then all of a sudden it clicked, and I'm like, holy crap, it's the same guy in all of these different settings. So like I wish, conventions happened, because he often showed up at the horror con, and I just kept missing him. So I just love to meet him one day. I have a list of people that I wish I had met but passed away. And so now I'm trying to think, as I get older, I'm like, I got to meet some of these people before they die. Or I do.
So we haven't really talked about D&D at all.
Okay.
You are an experienced DM like I am. And you're part of the Tavern Knights show, which, by the way, this week, Friday night, 7:00, right here on Twitch. But this game for me is different than just about any other game I've played. There's an energy in this game that I don't know. I don't know if it's the newer players, or if it's just the way that everyone's coming together and that everyone's really enjoying playing in this particular setting, or what. But there is an energy that I get from all of you as the players that just makes me want to. You guys have inspired me to start writing again and doing things like that, and creating this adventure that I've had in my head for years that I've never put on paper. Granted, some of it is I'm kind of stealing now, because it's much easier to just steal a map and slap it into Roll20 than it is to try and create that map.
Well, yeah, and we don't have all the time in the world, and we're just trying to play a game and have fun and share it. So I don't see a single thing wrong with that. I would agree. I mean, I think one of the things, so in full disclosure, when we first started out, it was really hard for me to kind of find the time to drive out to where you are and sit around the table. And there was always something coming up. And ironically, being able to play online, even though we're forced to, is actually making it easier in some ways for me. Because, I've got stuff going on at home, and it's hard for me to be away for hours and hours, for just my own quote unquote selfish reasons, like not going to work and I have to be here. There's things that are happening, in my home life that it's nice to just be here. I don't have to think about it. Not that anything ever happens, but it's nice. And so it's become more routine. It's become a part of who I am. So I think when we transition back, or if we ever, knock on wood, get to, that'll make it easier. Because I think that energy is actually, I'll say, our group is, besides you, which I didn't really know when we first started, and Russ, who was in my game, like I didn't know anybody really in the group. And I feel like we are honestly like becoming friends through all of this. And we're, our pre-show conversations are much more personable, and, we miss when people aren't there. And I think some of that energy is hard to manufacture. It's just, it either happens or it doesn't. And, I do miss DMing sometimes, and I watch what you're doing, and I'm thinking about games, and I'm like, and I'll put it out there, and you're under no obligation to say yes or no at this point. But if there was ever the opportunity, if you wanted to take, we should maybe have one shots once in a while. Someone has a break and I could run something, or somebody else, maybe some of these new timers, we should force them into the DM chair once in a while. When they get comfortable, but I mean, I think it's a really good experience, especially among a group of people who you've come to trust, who aren't going to judge you, who are going to help you, to take a spin in the chair.
Well, so for those that don't know, that might be out there listening to this, we have 3 people in the group that have been playing for a year, basically. So it's my wife Renee and her 2 brothers. Sydney's been playing for a couple of years. Ian's been playing for several years. Yumi and Russ have been playing since the beginning of time. So,
since we were wee
yes.
lads.
Renee's saying hard pass on that, by the way.
Oh, come on. Tell her, I promise there won't be any puppets involved.
Well, so, and the, but with that, they've come into this with not knowing what to expect, and every one of them, I hear from them all the time about how much they're loving it. Pete is constantly, I can't wait till next game. Anytime we get together, I can't wait till next game. We get together with Rich and Pete, and that's all we're talking about is D&D. We're talking about that. Both of them, Rich and Pete, have run games for their children now.
Oh, great.
And started getting them in. As a matter of fact, Rich's two daughters loved the adventure that he did so much that they were actually making like balloon beholders.
Oh, wow.
And stuff. They both made their own beholders, and they had a blast. So it's really kind of cool. Renee and I actually bought a thing. We were gonna go up north this summer with the family, and Pete and his family weren't gonna make it. Rich and his family were, and we had purposely bought. And unfortunately, I wound up having to stay home due to a lot of things that were going on. Basically, mostly me spraining my ankle. But we had bought the Cats and Catacombs figure set, and I was actually going to go online and find stuff and actually run a Cats and Catacombs for my nieces along, and make Rich and Renee and Rich's wife all play in it as well, so that they were playing with the girls. So,
that's awesome.
But it didn't happen, so we'll do that later. We'll do that at another time.
Yeah.
So.
Well, now they've cut their teeth. They're actually playing.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, and all of them have really been loving the game. I mean, and to me, the energy and the interaction between all of you, and the way that you guys are starting to find your legs, basically, and you're coming together as a group, and it's like you're learning each other. I mean, It very much is everyone learning the other characters, and you're finding synergies in your abilities and things like that. And to me, seeing you guys start doing this is really helping me to build on storylines too.
No, it's great. As long as Russ can figure out how to keep his character out of my way.
The two of you are a hell of a tank wall.
We are, though. Yeah, stuff bounces off the two of us. Put the paladin and the cavalier in the front line, and just stuff bounces off of us.
The problem is you block the hall for people like your monk, who's like, I can't get to.
That's true. But actually, I really enjoy too that, like, Renee and I will message back and forth sometimes, either during the game a little bit to set up something, or a little bit offline. Like, just so you know, this is Bennick's point of view on this, and you might have known this from your conversations. So for the listeners, you set up something I think was very useful, is that you paired the new player with the veteran player so that their characters had some already established connection.
In some cases.
Rich
didn't get that. Rich came in with the NPCs.
Okay, that's right.
And Pete was actually by himself. Pete's the one character that was by himself at the beginning.
Oh, that's right.
He was at the temple with you and Renee, but he was part of the library. He was working in the library. You guys were much more of the martial types.
Yep.
So he you might have seen him around, and he might have seen you, but there wasn't really any interaction.
Yeah, Rich was easy to rope in because both our characters were veterans of the war that had ended recently, and so we were able to connect on that level. But yeah, with Pete, Pete's been a riot. The running apple juice gag it never gets old. That
and the whole goblins. Oh nope, I'm misty stepping my ass over there.
Yeah, dragons no problem. Goblins no. It's like, Yeah, it's a riot. Yeah, it's good. Good
Well, and
times.
seeing some insight too, like him asking to go to his childhood home because you guys were over in that area, and just going to check it out and seeing what you saw at the time, and him telling his story. That's the
Yeah.
kind of stuff I really look forward to, is how the is getting the background stuff, not just vomiting out background, but actually working it in.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was doing too. I was waiting for someone to give me shit for dropping 250 gold on my parents' doorstep and basically like, dude, you need that money. I'm like, I don't need that money. There's nothing to spend money on in fifth edition. Like, it's one of the big critiques of fifth edition is there's really not much to spend money on. Unless it's an exorbitant amount of money with like a magic item or something, or you're a wizard and you're buying supplies all the time. There isn't a lot of cooked in cost of living expenses, and we had made enough gold, and I was, wanted to connect to this kind of backstory for my character and pull some of this ancient legends forward. And, I thought it all worked.
Yeah, it did. And Renee actually just brought something up. It's the talking about Euchariah. Is the oh, I can do that too. Fireball.
Oh, God.
Oops, hit Bennick. Shit.
Yeah. And then Bennick's only concern was at least he didn't hit my horse.
Yeah.
I survived. I'm fine. At least he didn't fry the horse because the horse would not have survived that. And I just paid that horse off, dang
it. Yep. But also, through the pandemic, a lot of things have changed. One, like us having to go from being around a table, which there's definitely a different feel when you're around the table than there is online. I think we've done a good job of still keeping things light and still keeping everyone engaged and doing it and really being part of it. But being around the table is just so much fun because you can so easily see other people's reactions. Like when Ian rolls and you just see him go. You can occasionally see that on the stream and on Roll20, but the pictures are so small. The what we get to see is so small that it's more difficult. You don't quite get that, but I think we've done a decent job of still carrying over that energy into the virtual world. But along with that, a lot of things have changed as far as hobbies and stuff like that too. And one of the things that Renee and I have gotten into, well, I've gotten back into it, and Renee has gotten into it, is painting. And I know you're a huge painter of miniatures and things like that. You got your station back there in the
the gloom
in the background. Your Warhammer poster up there on the wall. What was it that actually got you into painting?
Okay. So back when this goes way back. So when we were kids, it was D&D, and then other games that were coming along, and then this thing that I don't know which one of us in our group discovered, but was Warhammer 40K. The Rogue Trader book came out, and we had all played with our GI Joes and our Transformers, and in a lot of ways, this was kind of the next iteration. And at that time, they had, Space Marines and Space Orcs and Space Elves, and it was space everything, Space Dwarves. They didn't have their fancy names yet. And so we all kind of, without really talking about it, got into it. And my friend had bought the book, and we were all flipping through it and got excited. And they had like a big ping pong table in the basement, or as a pool table that had one of those inserts that you could turn it into a ping pong table. And so we were able to have a place to play, and we all picked an army and we didn't want any duplicates. And so I ended up with some Space Marines and some Imperial Guard, and my friend had the Harlequins, which is what I really wanted. And so we had there was a lot of fights and arguments, but his mom was a professional painter, and she worked she has stuff on the permanent. She was a kind of a folk artist and used a lot of craft paint and a lot of the like dollar store, 20 ounce or 15 ounce, 8 ounce bottles, whatever they are, the dollar store bottles or the ones you get from Joann's. And she did a lot of stuff. Like she had some, I don't know if it's still there, but she had some things on permanent display at the Smithsonian and their Christmas display. So it was very folksy, kind of Victorian looking art. And so there was all these paints around. And so it was very easy to kind of make that transition. A lot of people talk about in the 80s where it was only like enamel paints and testers, which, we bought too, but that acrylics didn't really hit the miniature world until much later. And now I'm just realizing like we had access to all these acrylics like right out of the gate because of my friend's mom. And that's where we played, and we would borrow paints. And she didn't mind as long as we were, didn't make a huge mess or waste paint or any of that, and put them back in her system where she had them in her colors and all that. But so I'd started there, and then we had gotten into things like BattleTech, which had lead miniatures and a few other games. And then about maybe I hit high school and I just swore off miniature games. Like it was just too much of a pain. There was a lot of drama. My friends and I would argue about what models we owned, and it was a lot of money. And I said, never again. I'm never playing miniature games again. It's comic books, it's D&D, it's other things, but miniatures, no way. And then flash forward until gosh, maybe I think it's been almost 15 years now. So I was probably in my early 30s, late 20s, and I just started finding the need to have something else. And my RPG game was kind of falling apart. And there was a game store that I would go to a lot, and there were guys there playing a different game, not Warhammer. It was War Machine, which is Privateer Press. And I got really into that. And I never liked painting, to be honest with you. Even when I was a kid, I didn't like painting. I didn't like painting now. I've only really, really gotten into painting probably in the last 6 months. And
so over quarantine.
Quarantine and finally taking the plunge on an airbrush.
Yeah, Renee and I have been looking. I've been starting to price those out.
I've been looking at. I love building models. I love kind of kit bashing and creating my own conversions of models, and I love the detail painting at the end where it's all sort of coming together. What I hate is how long it takes to base coat.
Oh.
And the airbrush does like 90% of that. And so that was, I held off because the last thing I wanted to do was spend a couple $100 for a bunch of equipment that's just going to sit there and get no use. So I bought it. I went for it. My wife was actually very instrumental, and she's like, you're working so hard. Life sucks. Like, just do something for yourself. Like, just do it. I'm like, all right, fine. Like I had to get pushed into it. And then I played around with it, and turned out, I mean, I don't want to like whatever pat my own back, but I guess I kind of took to it really easily. Like I had a knack for the airbrush thought. I did a lot of research. I watched a lot of videos on it and just followed what people were doing. And now because of that, like I'd never had a fully painted army before. I'd never really been able to paint more than a couple miniatures without getting burned out. And back in mid-August, I set myself a challenge to paint a full army, 60 models. And I just finished that, last week? So I actually finished an army. And they're all consistent, and they're probably 50 to 60% airbrush work. And then the rest is all detail.
They looked awesome too, by the way. Just
thank you.
I know I said that when you sent the picture out, but to our group, but yeah, they really do look awesome. The glow effect is just really cool.
Yeah, and I was, I learned a lot. I tried to push myself and did some weird stuff, like, you highlight usually from the sun, right? And so you kind of think about where the light would be hitting something, and I reversed it because they're all ghosts. So, and I was actually inspired by the old, the whole scheme and the whole desire to do it was inspired, one, by the Halloween season, but two, by the Night on Bald Mountain Fantasia video with the big demon that's summoning all the ghosts out of the graveyard. And the music that goes along with it would be like running through my head while I'm painting because I'm that big of a nerd. And, just, but yeah, that's how I got into it. And now I'm planning my next big project. And I literally broke it down. I think I spent an hour per model. And I spent maybe an hour to hour and 20 minutes a night over like 87, like, I don't know, 50 days or something like that. So it's not like an inordinate amount of time. I'm always self-conscious if like people I know that I work with would see my work and be like, "Are you working or are you just painting all day?" I'm like, "No,
So
it's only like an hour a night, and it's keeping me sane. It's keeping me from like, doing something stupid and not getting my work done."
so
So
Renee wants to know if you still have the first fig you ever painted.
the first fig I ever painted, no. I have one that was probably in the first two or three figs I ever painted, which I think I do. He's probably over in my junk drawer. Um, and I have a lot. I have a number of some of the older ones that I painted, and some that even when I got rid of armies or collections, when I got out of one game and got into another, I held on to like my favorite model or favorite couple models because I had finished painting them and I liked them. Um, but yeah, I have one model. It's really chunky, bad. Like, so Reaper used to make just a basic paint line. And I
Mm-hmm.
remember those were the first acrylic paints that I purchased that I used. And I painted this guy. It's one of the old 1980s, late 80s Imperial Guard Sentinel. And it's like this goofy little walker that looks like a knockoff of an AT-ST, but with more like an egg shape. And the guy's sitting on the top hatch. And I did some piss poor camouflage on his uniform. And he looks okay. There's no washes, there's no highlights. It's basically just block colors, and I called it done. But it's super chalky because, yeah. Actually,
Yeah.
Duncan Rhodes, who's like a big kind of the Bob Ross of miniature paintings, he worked for Games Workshop, and he does a lot of videos now. He's spun off on his own. He does his own company where he gets like tutorials and his own, I think he does training and stuff now or something. But he did a video recently where he had his first model he ever painted, and then he painted a new model in the same color scheme. And it was amazing. But like he had done the whole thing from a kit that came with one Space Marine and a bunch of paints and one little paintbrush, and he used that paintbrush for everything, and it's just all gooey and gummed up. And then to watch this beautiful model, like this guy who's able to make a living off of painting miniatures, just shows how far you can come. You guys have been
Yeah.
really getting into it. I was surprised. I was like, oh my gosh.
Yes, we have. And Renee is a fucking natural at it.
Yeah, she is.
Her first fig is way better than like my. It's at least as good as the figs that I can paint now.
Yeah.
And that was her first one. Now, granted, she watched some videos and didn't just slap paint on like I did when I first started when I was like 10 years old. But still, the talent for the detail that she got was just fantastic.
Yeah, and then she picked a hard army to start with, the Daughters of Cain.
Yeah, and she's doing the Daughters of Cain now. Her first model, her first fig was actually a bar wench.
Right, I remember that. But yeah, going into Warhammer and you guys picking out a couple of start collecting the Daughters of Cain, for those that don't know, are all like scantily clad murder witches, elven murder, crazy, cultists, and they all have skimpy outfits on, and they're very tight fitting, and they're all ornate and scroll work and getting all of those flesh right. Yeah, it's. I have a small army of them too, and I've puttered out on working on them because of some of the detail work involved.
Well, one of the things she did, which I thought was really cool, when she showed me one of her hag queens or something like that, she's got like this chalice full of blood, basically,
Right.
that she's holding up, and she painted that, and she actually has it like dripping down her hand, and there's spots on her leg that is just below it to where you can see it dripping, and I'm like, that's awesome.
Yeah, that level of sort of verisimilitude where you sort of absorb yourself into that universe. Yeah, yep. And this it's entirely, I mean, it's so, to me, the best part about it is it's one of the few things, because of my work and because of all of my busy brain and how I'm always thinking and they're always going, is it's just the one thing I've been able to find that really allows me to shut that all off for a little while. I can't shut it off and do nothing, but I
Right.
can shut it off in a way that sort of, it's that they call it flow, right? So you achieve flow and you're just working and the time passes, and I put on podcasts or I put on an audiobook and things just roll.
Um, yeah, so Renee said, oof, so many scales and so much, and also much hair.
But yeah, the hair is fun to paint. The skin is what drives me nuts. Finding a good skin recipe and then repeating it ad nauseum is a real challenge.
Do you use any sort of like magnifiers or anything like that when you're?
No, I don't. Not yet. Maybe as my eyes get worse, but right now, no, I don't use any magnification.
I've started using like the reading glasses type of thing, and I've really been looking at. I saw one that looked kind of cool, and then I saw another company that I was looking at. I think it was Green Stuff, Green Stuff Works or whatever. They have like a headband with like various things that you can put in to magnify, cool. And they have like a light, and that's one of the other things I was looking at because it started coming up on Amazon. But yeah, it's basically a headband with an LED light right here.
Oh, neat.
And then the magnifiers, and you have like a little tray of different magnifiers depending on what you want. And you can just you just stick it in and you put it on, and it just sits out here, and so you can just sit there and do your thing. I tried doing my ex actually got me when I started trying to get back into painting many years ago. She actually got me like a desk magnifying glass, and then like a little lamp that could clip onto it to give me more light. But the problem I was having was I was sitting up like this, and I'm like trying to do it this far away from my face, and I'm looking at it through this magnifier, and I would be like, okay, I want to get right, and just and because I couldn't tell where the paintbrush was. Yep. So I'm like, when we started getting back into it, I'm like, I have trouble seeing that close. Just focusing. So I'm like, maybe if I get like some reading glasses. So we went to the dollar store, and I'm like, we'll try this one. And I went home and put them on and started painting in it. And I'm like, oh my God, I actually know where things are. I didn't have that same problem of not knowing where the brush was, because it just seemed like I could tell exactly where things were. And I'm still not perfect by any means. I mean, I'm always going back and touching things up, but that's what gets me. So for me, it's and I know I'm a perfectionist, but I am a perfectionist, and that's one of the problems I have with painting, is that I expect it to be perfect, and I get things all done. Oh, hold on, something just happened here. I'm just going to close that down. A commercial just started playing on Renee's computer. So I'll paint something and I'll get it perfect, and then I'll go back and I'm like, okay, now I'm going to do this, and I fuck it up, and I'm like, God damn it! It's like I'm always going back. It's like it feels like there's the never ending touch ups. Is what it is. It's like every time I do something, I'm like, oh, now I got to go back and touch this up.
Yeah.
Oh, and now I got to go fix this. Oh, and now I got to go fix this. There's that point where it almost feels like the model's never going to get done. And that for me is where I get a little frustrated. But honestly, I'm truly loving it. I actually took a break from the Chaos Warriors, the Slaves of Darkness Warriors that I'm doing. I did 4 of them. I've got my aspiring champion to do, and I'm like, he's got so much detail, and there's so much. I'm like, I don't know how I want to do certain things like his shield and stuff like that. So I'm like, I'm gonna not do him yet. I've got these 5 over here that I still need to do, but I kind of want to start one of the knights. So I'm doing one of the Chaos Knights, and I just painted the first coat of paint on the armor on him and the horse, and I'm like, wow, that looks really cool, because I also realized that the paint that I'm using for them, which is a contrast paint, because I'm doing Mark and Nurgle on all of them. So it's a green contrast, and I didn't realize I had never truly shaken it up. I looked and there was like light pigment on the bottom. So I'm like, well, shit. So I sat there just shaking it. I think I shook that paint for at least 5 minutes because I would shake it for a while and I'd look at the bottom. Shit, there's still some there. Shake it some more. Shit, there's still some there. Shit, there's still some there. Like, come on. And finally, once all that little light green got gone from the bottom, and this coat of paint, though, when I put it on, I have to say, it looks better than any of the other paint I've put on. I thought the other stuff looked decent, but this looks amazing to me.
Yeah, contrast is a really interesting, for those that don't know, like GW about a year ago, Games Workshop came out with their contrast line, and a couple other companies are following suit. And it's essentially a wash and a paint mix, and it's formulated to dry in the cracks and leave a stain on the high points. So it's really good on super textured stuff like scales or armored panels. Big flat areas like a tank or something like that, or flatter armor, it can be really hard to get a nice even coat. So sometimes you have to thin it out with the medium or whatever. But the idea is that it's kind of a one coat and you're mostly there. And there's been a learning curve. I watched a lot of videos about people that have kind of found out other uses for contrast, and even the company is starting to produce other uses for it, to use it as a shade over a pre-existing color as opposed to just over white or gray. And then for the shaking thing, I actually bought some of those, and you can get like little glass beads at the dollar store, and those help. Like having
or the little ball bearings or something like that.
I got Army Painter's ball bearings because a friend who was the manager at the GW store in Ann Arbor actually opened his own company, Golden Rhino Games in Ypsilanti. And he, I went in there and I wanted to buy stuff, and I picked up a paintbrush and some paints, and I saw those, to support his store. And I saw Army Painter has like a thing of ball bearings, like 100 of them for a few bucks. And I was like, oh, let me buy these. I actually used them to resuscitate some old paints I found too, because I added some medium and dropped one of those ball bearings in there and just shook the hell out of it, and it brought some old paints back. So
cool. Yeah, actually, I have to do that with one of mine. My white, actually, I realized for some reason it looks like it didn't seal on the back, and it might be just that there was enough that was in there. I opened it up, and it was actually really goopy and really thick. So I'm like, shit, I need to drop some medium in there. And
white is that's a common problem, especially for Games Workshop. There's a petition going around from one of the YouTubers I follow that's trying to petition Games Workshop to transition to dropper bottles.
Oh yeah,
like trying to get signatures. They're like, please, would you stop using these little lidded containers and just dropper bottles?
I wish they would. I love dropper bottles personally.
Well, you lose a lot of paint, and you lose a lot of, because the seal, eventually, if you spill some on the outside, closing it and getting a good seal becomes really challenging. And I know people that buy like 100 dropper bottles, and you can peel the little labels off if you're careful, and they transfer their GW stuff themselves to dropper bottles. I haven't been able to be bothered with that. It'd be awesome if they eventually did it. And that company has started really listening to their market base in a way that they didn't used to in the past. Because maybe they do it.
Yeah, I mean, I love Citadel paints. I really do. Yeah. The GW paints, I love them. They are truly the best pigmented paints out there, I think. I've had good experience with some of the Reaper paints. Army Painter, I haven't had good luck with a lot of the paints that I've tried with them.
It depends on the paint. Like their white and their black are really nice for Army Painter. Some of their metallics are okay. Then you start getting into like the weird ones, like AK Interactive and Scale 75, which they both sell at Michigan Toy Soldier Company out in Royal Oak. Same price point, but like Scale 75 is a gel base, so all of their pigments are gel instead of powder, and so they have a different vibe to them, and they dry really, really matte. So those are cool. I've just been playing around with different companies. AK Interactive is kind of neat, but I just bought all their pastels because I've been learning all these different techniques. Like you can lighten a color, like instead of adding white to blue to make a lighter blue, I add this pastel blue so that it stays within the same zone. Pastel yellow to highlight red instead of adding white can help it from being too pinkish. or for flesh tones and stuff like that. So just playing around with like different techniques. Like I'm just addicted to watching like YouTube videos when I'm trying to go to sleep on like different,
I
painters and
forget
all of them.
I forget his name, but there's one guy that does paint videos for Citadel, British guy, which big surprise.
Yeah.
But he's just fantastic, and he's one of the ones that actually showed like his first model.
Yeah, well, Duncan did work for GW, and then he left. Peachy, Chris, I think his first name is Chris, but Peachy actually taught Duncan, and then they hired him in, and then they got another newer guy. But yeah, they're all fun. I mean, they really lay out a lot of good, like sort of getting your chops, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's a handful of YouTubers that are really kind of up and coming. eBay Miniature Rescue is really awesome. He buys cheap models off of eBay and then repaints them. And if they're broken, he'll fix them. He has a 3D printer that he'll print extra bits to fix missing parts. And then he puts it back up on eBay for the price he paid as the starting bid. So if he paid $10 for like a $50 model, and then he paints it, ostensibly it'd be worth a lot, and then he just puts it back up for what he paid for it as the starting bid, so that he at least breaks even, and then gets a video out of it. So
Yeah.
it's kind of a cool system.
Yeah.
And then there was a woman, Dana Howell, who she had this sort of synthwave color scheme that was a direct inspiration for my recent project, but I changed the colors. I didn't use as many wild colors as she does, but she used to be, I guess, an animator and did background animations for cartoons and such. I don't know which ones in particular. And then now she does this full time, just through Patreon. So it's
cool.
crazy. I don't know if I'd want to turn my life into a job, but so anyway, before I forget, I wanted to speak to the perfectionism thing. So
yes.
I used to be like that. I think one of the things that helped was remembering that I just wanted to get the model on the table for a game. So you guys have to actually get to the point of playing someday when all
that's what I was going to say was that's what we're actually looking forward to, is being able to actually play. Granted, I know that what we have right now, the starter sets, aren't really enough to truly play a real game, but we could have a little fight between us at least.
Absolutely. And then, the other thing too is I set, setting goals. Like I was really eager about this idea that I was going to get 60 models painted in 60 hours in 60 days. And I ended up, getting it done in 47 days, and it took me 65 hours or something ridiculous. But there was that goal, and you start seeing like, okay, this is good enough, I'm going to move on. This is good enough, and I'm going to move on. Or no one's ever going to see this. So I'm obsessing over something that's on the bottom of the model that I have to turn over to get a good look at. No one's going to see it. So good enough, and keep moving, and so it's just a matter, and I think it's coming in my career too, where you start realizing like, don't let perfect be the enemy of good, as the old saying goes, and know that even a year from now, like, you're going to hate everything you painted, because you're going to feel better. One of the other rules I typically follow is I never go back to old models. Some people swear like, oh, I'll go back someday and I'll fix this up and I'll fix that up. It's like, no, I always move forward, but that's just me. Everybody's a little different. So
yeah, Renee got me the Corvus Cabal for my birthday. So because she knew I really liked it. I'm a huge fan of crows. I love the corvid, the those types of birds, the corvids. And so she knew that was one of the and it's part of the reason I got the Slaves of Darkness was because they're part of that. Yeah. Granted, they're for, what is it, Warcry or whatever, the
skirmish game.
Yeah. So but they can be played with AOS as well, Age of Sigmar. So I'm like, sure, what the hell? I mean, I've opened them so I could look at them, but I have not started building them yet. And I'm like, oh shit, there's like they're completely different than the Slaves of Darkness that I had. They're much more like her army in that there's no pegs. They're just they're not like easy fit together pieces. You have to actually look and go, okay, this goes here, and now I gotta hold it for like 3 minutes while it dries. And
Well, as long as you're using plastic glue, it should go quick.
yeah,
But
so
the one guy, there's one in there that he's got like the wings and he's on
yeah,
stilts, and he's
yeah,
hilarious. I like the splintered fang, which are very sort of
yes.
Romanesque. I've thought about getting those, even though I don't play any army that could really use them. But that's the danger of this game, especially when you get more into painting, because we can't really play very easily right now.
Hmm.
Then you start thinking like, ooh, it'd be fun to just pick this model up because you get to paint it. And AOS just released like their biggest models ever. They've got the mega gargants have started with their own army. Basically, an entire 2,000 point army is like 6 or 7 models. They have 2 different sizes of giants, like the mega gargants and the regular gargants, and they have a ridiculous number of wounds. And yeah, I'm tempted, but again, I already have enough crazy projects and models that I can't bring myself to do it.
Well, I heard that there's a new Marathi model coming out too.
No, she has one. They have I don't think a new Marathi model, but
Oh,
a
I
new
thought
book.
I know there's a new book, but I thought they were also coming out with a new model for her too. Maybe not.
I hope not. The model's gorgeous and only a couple of years old. So the one they have now is like a 2-parter. She's the only model in the game that transforms
Mm.
partway through the game. So she starts off like a regular size model and then turns into the giant snake, um, half snake with wings, Medusa kind of
Yeah.
thing. And she's like 8 inches tall or something ridiculous. I have her. She's sitting in a box waiting to be built because I want to paint her before I fully assemble her. I
Mm.
think there's enough moving parts and hard to reach areas, but I also need to get my skin recipe and my chops to the point where I feel comfortable that I could do her justice, where I won't hate looking at her when she's done.
Oh, it's the Melusai are going to have a new set.
Interesting, really.
That's what Renee just said. Yeah.
Oh yeah, well they have a new character coming out for the
Mm.
Melusai. She has they have a new leader model, and that's coming in the big box set. That's coming out hopefully in November.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's the crazy thing. Like if you have too many armies, like or multiple stuff, there's always something new coming out for this game. It's almost like the comic book thing. I don't know how new people get into it. Um, but they are pretty good at having starter boxes where it's like learn the game, especially for 40K. Just came out with their 9th edition.
Mm-hmm.
They came out with a series of like small starter kits for people who are either getting into playing or getting into painting. So you can walk in, and, and I think game stores have it up on comic book stores to not to call back to our conversation from earlier. Like I walk into a comic book store and most of them anyway, nobody even approaches you. It's
Yeah.
like, they don't ask what you're there for, if they can help you out or help you get started. But the hobby shop, if you go up to and I don't even know what they would say if you did, but if you go up to a guy at a hobby shop, most of them can point you to a product to get you started.
Yep.
Like D&D, you could buy the starter kit. Pathfinder has fallen in that, and Starfinder. Most of these companies are starting to put out starter boxes where for 25 or 30 or 50 bucks, you can get everything you need to play, and you don't ever have to buy anything else, but they hope you'll buy all of their other books.
Mm-hmm.
So they never put you in a place where you have to, but they make it enticing enough that you probably will.
Yep. Well, I could talk all night about this kind of stuff, but we should probably start wrapping stuff up. We actually went longer than Russ and I normally do. We're actually approaching 2 hours here. So,
I think we usually do that.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's hard to stop talking about the stuff because there's so much to talk about, and so it's easy talking, and it's easy to talk about stuff that you love. So, I think for that we'll start wrapping stuff up. Remember, I want to thank you, Ed, for coming out and filling in for Russ last minute. Really appreciate that. It's been a blast.
Yeah, well, you asked me last night, right?
Yeah, well, that's when I found out. Right. I was actually still on the phone with Russ when I was messaging you. So, okay. Hey, what are you doing tomorrow? But yeah, so just remember, everybody, you can download our show, the audio version, pretty much anywhere that you get your podcast fix. We're on iTunes. We're on Stitcher, we're on Spotify, Google Music, which is moving over to YouTube Music, but they're not taking their podcast with them. They're actually creating a new thing called Google Podcasts. And then you can also follow us. You can find us, this show on Twitter, along with our other shows such as Tavern Knights, which will be this weekend or this Friday at 7 p.m. right here on Twitch. You can also follow us on most of the social medias. We are on Facebook, Nerds with Alcohol Show. You can actually see it up above us here right now. Twitter, at Drinking Nerds, and Instagram, Drinking Nerds. We're also on Untapped. If you're on that beer drinking app, it is, or beer rating app, really. We are Drinking Nerds on there. Just send us a friend request and we'll get you added. So
cool. I could add you to that. I had that for a while when I was actually drinking beer. But
I actually have gotten away from it quite a bit. I need to get back to actually posting the ratings and stuff. I was doing that for a while. I was also doing a lot more on Instagram, and I've kind of fallen off of that too. So
yeah, Instagram is, I think, my only thing that I actually spend any time on anymore. Facebook a little bit. I
want to get back to Instagram and start doing more than just the beer that we're doing. I want to start doing things like the models that we're building and doing that kind of thing, and doing more along that line as well.
Well, I know Renee has an Instagram. I have mine too, that I share all of that's where all my painting stuff goes up. So, most of my feed is all painting stuff. So it's crazy. It's good times.
But all right. Well, thanks again, Ed. Really appreciate you coming out. It's been a blast. Always love having you on the show. So I think on that note, until next time, Sláinte.
Sláinte.
All right. Have a good night, everybody.
Adios.